Going live here. I am live. This is Hannibal from the HannibalTV.com. About to do my review of this week's Wrestling Observer. It is December 13th, 2019, 10:03 a.m. I'm going to get right into it. This is the earliest Wrestling Observer review I've ever done. Came in late last night, but I'll be honest, I didn't really feel like reading it last night. In WWE news, Matt Hardy, whose contract is up in February, gave a hint that he's leaving on Twitter. He said, I needed to return to WWE to finish the right way. I didn't want 2010 to be my finale. And Dave Meltzer states, if Matt leaves, it doesn't necessarily mean Jeff will also leave. Jeff's contract also is up in February. We know Jeff has had some legal issues this year. He's also had an injury. He's been recovering. So we'll see. They haven't brought back the people that have had legal issues yet. So far, it's been one of the Usos and Jeff Hardy. They haven't been seen since their legal issues, at least on TV. The annual tribute to the troops show was recorded December the 7th in Jacksonville, Florida, at a Marine Corps base. Approximately 2,000 servicemen and their families showed up to the event. It was not recorded for airing on either the network or TV, so it's not going to air public this year. No reason given for that. Seth Rollins played a babyface on that show, even though he's now a heel, apparently. In WWE attendance notes, December 5th, their SmackDown taping on last Friday in Fayetteville had a sellout crowd of 7,000 fans, which was their first legitimately sold out television taping in a very long time. This past Monday, Raw drew 5,500 fans in Greenville. On December 8th, the Raw house show in Augusta, Georgia only drew 2,000 fans, and I'm pretty sure they're rounding up to 2,000 for that. There was also a December 8th SmackDown house show in Daytona Beach that also drew 2,000 fans. So you can assume they're rounding up for that show as well. Not very good numbers for main roster shows. The NXT taping on Wednesday, the 11th, at Full Sail drew 400 fans. December the 5th, NXT had an all women's show in Jacksonville that had 400 fans. December the 6th, NXT ran a show in Dade City, Florida, before only 150 fans, and they're probably rounding up for that, which is pretty much around Impact Wrestling numbers, which, by the way, Impact doesn't release their viewership from TV or pay-per-view anymore, so you know that's dismal. December the 7th, NXT ran Tampa with 250 fans. December the 12th, in the ratings war, as I already mentioned in my video yesterday, both NXT and AEW had 778 fans. However, AEW had more viewers from the 18 to 49 demographic. Carolina Sohn says, what's my opinion on why WWE house shows are down? Because the TV product isn't good. That unfortunately brings house shows down when the TV product isn't good. People don't want to pay to see non-televised events. And it's the same with independent shows. It's hard to draw at independent shows these days, with few exceptions, because the TV product isn't good. A lot of fans that go to independent wrestling shows in small towns, particular, they're not even like real wrestling fans. They'll just go to an event in a small town, for example, just for something to do. But if it's not popular on TV, they're not going to want to go see it on the lower level as much. So, of course, I wish the television products were more popular. Anthony says next week Raw will draw flies if they're lucky. Good morning to Mike Mikovich and Michael Kennedy who are checking in with me. For AEW, their Dynamite show on December 11th drew 4,700 with 4,500 paid. There was a lot of empty seats in that arena. However, 4,500 paid is still a very good number for an upstart company. Apparently, sales are not going too well for AEW for next week's taping in Corpus Christi, as well as the January 8th taping in South Haven, Mississippi, which is just outside of Memphis, and Cleveland. The AEW taping there, tickets also aren't selling well for those three shows, according to the Wrestling Observer. In Ring of Honor news, as we stated, when the top companies aren't drawing well, it filters down to the smaller companies. According to Dave Meltzer, Ring of Honor's biggest show of the year, Final Battle, their tickets are not selling well. There's only around 200 tickets sold. Of course, Pierre Carl Ouellet, PCO, former Great North Wrestling Canadian champion, is challenging Roosh for the ROH World title on that show. I guess we'll find out if PCO re-signed or not at that show because his contract supposedly ended December 1st, and he's still doing that title match, and it hasn't been announced if he's re-signed or not yet. He's also wrestling the next night in Philadelphia. It's also noteworthy for that Philadelphia Ring of Honor show on December 15th that Devon Storm, who was known as Crowbar in WCW, is going to be on that show. I answer a couple more questions. Troy Martrism says ROH is a great company still. I haven't seen much of it other than PCO's Twitter match clips. A1 ITB says, how would I make WWE better? Well, I'll be honest with you. All I've seen of WWE is stuff that's popped up in my Twitter feed and YouTube videos. I'm not interested enough to watch it. I'm not part of it. I mean, if Jinder Mahal, who I used to be friends with, or another wrestler who I was friends with has a match, I'll watch, but I haven't watched it enough to be able to tell you what's better. Cameron Casier says, thoughts on Billy Jack Haynes losing his mind. I will say one thing about Billy Jack Haynes. He does have CTE. At first, when I had that altercation with him, I thought he was purposely making up a lot of his stories, but I genuinely believe he believes them. How many of them are true? I would say it's probably, I don't know. I'm not even going to say a percentage, but there's definitely some stories that he's told in his shoot interviews that aren't true. And that's the reason why I've taken some of the clips down, because if someone that was directly involved is able to show me proof that one of his stories isn't true, I'm not going to leave up a story that's a full-blown fabrication. I mean, I do mention in these shoot interview clips that they don't necessarily reflect my opinion, whatever these wrestlers are saying. For instance, Jimmy Jacobs, we put up an interview of him. He's an Impact Wrestling writer. I don't necessarily agree with his principles. I'll put anything on there. I don't necessarily agree with them, and that also includes Billy Jack Haynes. In MLW news, Kevin Von Erich apparently is going to be appearing regularly on the TV show next year. Oh, also for Ring of Honor, Brian Zane from Wrestling with Regret is now a backstage interviewer for them now. We all know none of these wrestling companies want to give me a wrestling job because they know I can beat up all their talent. However, one of these companies should give me a job as an interviewer. Someone actually pointed it out the other day. I should do shoot interviews with some of the AEW talent. And for AEW, I would be open to that, by the way. In UFC news, for their December 7th event in Washington, D.C., they actually drew less than AEW drew in that arena. They had 10,816 fans for a gate of 900,032, 593.20. So nearly $1 million gate. As far as TV viewership, the main card averaged 1,071,000 viewers. So here's something interesting. Raw and SmackDown still get significantly more TV viewers than UFC. The $50,000 bonuses for the December 7th Washington card went to Rob Font and Ricky Simon for Fight of the Night, while the Performance of the Night bonuses went to Bryce Mitchell and Mahmoud Muradov. Sorry if I'm butchering those names. Don't mean anything by it. After Mark Hunt's lawsuit against the company was thrown out, UFC has now filed against Mark Hunt for reimbursement of legal expenses, claiming they spent $302,000 in legal fees and $86,000 in other costs to defend themselves. I did do a short interview with Mark Hunt on this channel. Look it up, Mark Hunt, the Hannibal TV. He only gave me about 7 minutes, which was unfortunate, but better than nothing. Dana White said basically the obvious, that if Conor McGregor beats Donald Cerrone on January 18th and Khabib beats Tony Ferguson, he's going to try and make a Khabib versus McGregor light heavyweight title match. And also in wrestling / MMA news, I already reported this, Tito Ortiz beat Alberto Del Rio at 310 of their pay-per-view main event last Saturday for Combate Americas. Apparently, no pay-per-view number has been released yet. However, it's likely going to be lower than the 40,000 buys that Ortiz versus Chuck Liddell had, as the Ortiz versus Liddell fight had 200,000 searches after the fight, where the Ortiz Del Rio fight only had about 50,000 searches. Now, apparently, this fight aired on network television in Mexico, so it could have had good ratings in Mexico. On a good note, yes, Alberto Del Rio lost, but Sexy Star, the Mexican women's wrestler, who I would love to have in Great North Wrestling, by the way. If anyone knows how to contact her, I would love to have Sexy Star in Great North Wrestling. She's one of my favorite women wrestlers. She's now 2-0. She won her fight via guillotine stoppage at 2:47 of the first round. I'll answer some of your questions. Oh, by the way, related to Mexico news, Juventud Guerrera, who I said he was not one of my most fun interviews. About half an hour in, as I was editing this, he started tapping his foot, which is never a good sign. He wasn't my favorite person in the world to deal with, but his full interview is now up at patreon.com/the Hannibal TV, along with Hillbilly Jim's full shoot interview, which is also up at patreon.com/the Hannibal TV. Hillbilly Jim was a true pleasure to deal with. I would consider him a friend now. My Shane Douglas Part 2 is up there, Sandman, and Billy Jack Haynes is now up there as well. I still have the Snitsky one to edit. And then next month in January, I'm going to be doing a full shoot with Sabu, a part 3 with Kevin Sullivan, and maybe some more while I'm out in LA. I'll be covering the big PCW Ultra show January the 10th in Wilmington, California, just outside of LA. That's going to be a huge card. Chris Masters is also on that card, along with the Blood Hunter versus Sabu, War Beast and Contra Unit from MLW is going to be on that card. Huge stars are going to be on that card. Look it up, PCW Ultra. And the It's going to be a great show. Highly suggest anyone in that LA region to come to that show. I'll answer a couple more questions. AEW is running a show in Philly, but probably won't sell half. They did do a Philadelphia show not too long ago, and apparently Ted Hart showed up at it. I don't think he was on camera. There was a picture that came out this week, as I already reported, of Ted Hart in the AEW audience with Jack Evans petting his cat. Ted Hart is now released from MLW. Ted Hart had told me he was only making $500 a match in MLW, and he didn't like being tied down to that contract. So he said personally to me that he's happy to be released. Rio Labs says AEW needs bigger guys. Come on. Well, tweet that to them. I've been there to see Sting versus Mick in TNA, met the Dudleys. Tony Martin says, I don't really get where that's from. Ken Carr says, I can't wait for Matt Hardy to come to AEW. The Hardy Boys would definitely be used better in AEW, in my opinion, if they'll put out the money for those guys. I'm sure that would be a good thing. Plus, I don't know what the drug testing is like in AEW, but that might work out better for Jeff Hardy, depending on what Jeff Hardy's contract is. If he smokes pot, which I know at one point WWE had weed as a banned substance. I'm not sure if it still is. Motor Stash, did I ever wrestle in the UK? Yes. In 2008, I wrestled for All Star Wrestling in the UK. I got a big victory over Doug Williams over there. I wrestled as tag team partners with PCO and Rene Dupree over there. And I wrestled against guys like Mason Ryan. So I had a short but good run. I would like to go back to the UK. All-Star Wrestling, they were wrestling literally like 7 shows a week, twice on Saturday, twice on Sundays, but it wasn't really necessarily my style of wrestling, and I didn't find that the compensation was enough. I made more money at my regular job back here in Canada, so I only lasted out there about 6 weeks. Was I in OVW? No, I was never in OVW. I was in Deep South Wrestling for about 2 months in the fall of 2006. Tyler S. says, is Mason Ryan still in with Cirque du Soleil? From what I understand, yes. Higgins Adventures asks, what's up with Marty Scurll? Dave Meltzer, from what I understand, believes he's probably going to end up in AEW, but from what I understand, Scurll is still wrestling at the Final Battle Ring of Honor pay-per-view coming up. Although I don't know if he's re-signed or not. Similar to PCO, Brody Lee is still out with his leg injury. One more question. Mike Makovich says he misses the regional areas in the old days. I do too. NXT is trying to bring that back, but unfortunately, like in the UK, for instance, for the NXT UK, they're only doing TV tapings. They tried to do house shows, but they weren't drawing. And I just read you the NXT house show results from this past week in the US. I mean, one of the crowds was only 150, so they're not drawing like enough to be really sustainable to open up in multiple places. Like we heard rumors that NXT might open up a Canadian division, but is there really an audience for that? I don't think so, really, at this point. Wrestling, if it was the Attitude Era and wrestling was really popular at the top level and it filtered down to the lower levels, yes, I think there could be other divisions of NXT. But for now, I don't think the indie scene overall is not drawing as well as it was. We've heard a lot of these UK companies have recently gone out of business. Wrestle Circus, which I heard how kept hearing how great it was. I'm not even sure it lasted 2 years. So there's a lot of independent companies closing. Great North Wrestling, by the way, we're celebrating our 13th anniversary August 10th with a huge event at the Earl Armstrong Arena in Ottawa, February 29th in Smith Falls, Ontario. Just outside of Ottawa is the next Great North Wrestling event, featuring the Faces of Fear taking on Scorpio and the Blood Hunter. Tickets are on sale now. Go to thehannibaltv.com for more information. Last question. Here's a comment. Surely I would get a gig somewhere at NXT Canada. No, I wouldn't, because WWE doesn't like me for whatever reason. I asked Gerald Briscoe when NXT had a tryout in Canada back in August. I asked Gerald Briscoe, who's a WWE scout. He tried to get me an NXT tryout a couple of years ago in Orlando, which did go through. Then they mysteriously canceled it. I asked him about the NXT Canada tryout. He couldn't get me in. TJ Wilson, who got Lady Yasmin her NXT Canada tryout, asked for me, and they said they weren't interested in giving me a tryout. So really, there's no interest for whatever reason from WWE in me, which is fine. I enjoy doing my reporting, and between YouTube and my regular job, I'm making more money than I would make as a developmental wrestler, as well as the Great North Wrestling live event revenue. So for me to take a development contract where I would have to close down my YouTube account or sign over control of it, that would not be good for me. If I was wrestling for a company, I would rather it be for a company where I could continue my own YouTube channel. A Haunting says the Great North Wrestling match between Blood Hunter and Haku was awesome. Mark Anthony Givens says fuck WWE, death of wrestlers. Motor Stash says WWE would make me into a robot. Well, the only reason I would go to WWE is if they offered me a spot that was paying me hundreds of thousands a year, where like I could actually have an amount of money that would make a difference in my life. Otherwise, as I said, developmental, you're correct. They could sign me to a 3-year developmental contract where I'd have to like close down my YouTube channel and I could do nothing but practice for 3 years. So not interested in that. AEW doesn't appear to be interested in me, but I think AEW would be better for me because I could still have my YouTube channel. But as I said, I'm fine being a reporter. So on that note, have a good weekend, everybody. I do post the audio versions of these on the Great North Wrestling iTunes page. If you go to thehannibaltv.com and click on our iTunes link, it's on there. For Tyler S., by the way, that says go to NWA. NWA has no interest in me. I applied to their Contenders series, didn't hear back from them. We tried to get Nick Aldis to wrestle me in Great North Wrestling. They didn't even answer. So the NWA current champion is not a traveling champion that will go around to your company and wrestle the top stars of all the companies. It's not like the old days. NWA, not impressed with the product. So have a great day, everyone. I'm out of here. I'm going to have, got to go to the gym and I have a bunch of stuff to do today. See ya.